beautiful girl I'd ever seen before. Sea green eyes and long blonde hair, cool smooth smile and didn't have care. I don't know why, but she walked my way. I was scared to death, but I was ready to play. Love at first sight sets the spirit free. I felt the dark clouds part, I heard the angels sing. My heart caught fire and my soul can fly. That's when I knew I had to make her mine.
Hello, everybody. How you doing? My name is Mickey, and this is Mickey in the middle of the week. It's the big show made for Middle Americans. It's the quintessential show for Middle Americans, where all Middle Americans are welcome. It doesn't matter where you've been or where you go. It just matters that you're here right now, and I cannot tell you how happy I am that everybody's here. I know I've been away for a while, but the big show's back on the night. Mark Alcantara, congratulations. How you doing? Congratulations. You win the Mickey in the Middle golden medal for the first comment of the night. And there's Carolyn Greg's Ledger coming in with a silver. So, hey, thank you very much, everybody. I greatly appreciate everybody being here. So, I have had one heck of a last few weeks, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the happy Independence Day. Congratulations, everybody. We made it to another Independence Day. That is 249, and next year is going to be 250 years of independence living in America. We kicked King George III to the curb, and we said, hey, look here, we would rather be free, so that's what we're doing here. And then later, we're going to be talking about the big, beautiful bill right after I tell you about my trip, because my trip was absolutely spectacular. Now, when we talk about the big, beautiful bill, I don't want anybody to get upset. Listen, this is politics, the way that it goes. I'm not going to make too much of a commentary on this, except for just a few things, but we are going to be talking about the big, beautiful bill. So go ahead and hang on, and then we'll get to that here in just a second. So let's see. First I want to show you this. Last year, everybody, some people know that I grew some tomatoes last year after I got 5 whole tomatoes off of my plants last year that I planted and I cared for and I tendered. And then I put some fertilizer on them. I watered every day. I got 5 tomatoes last year, all year. And then a couple of weeks ago, I noticed something that was growing next to the house, and it is a wild tomato plant just growing anywhere. And look at this. Look at all these tomatoes that I got today. I just went out there and I just picked up some tomatoes. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 7 today from a wild tomato plant that was growing in my backyard. It eclipses the 5 that I grew last year. So now we are really growing some tomatoes. All right. So happy Independence Day, everybody. I would like to tell you about my trip and why I was not here last week. It was very exciting. On the 1st of July, I traveled from Dayton, Ohio, where I saw my good friend Brent Richburg and his beautiful wife, Chastity. And then I drove 13 hours to Plymouth, Massachusetts. If you don't know, Plymouth, Massachusetts is declared hometown of the United States of America. So there's that. It also has the most underwhelming memorial in the United States of America called Plymouth Rock. And if you have not seen Plymouth Rock, I encourage you to go to Plymouth and see Plymouth Rock. It's underwhelming because it's a rock. And when you get there, you look at it and just go, hey, that's a rock. So it's always good to see it. And here's the funny thing about it. It may not even be the rock that the people stepped on when they got off of the boats with the, Mayflower, the Santa Maria, and the Pinta. It might not have even been one of those. It might have been a rock close to there, but they took their best guess and they put it in a little cage so everybody can go see the original Plymouth Rock. So that was awesome. Hey, welcome, Susie. Hey, Don. I'm glad that everybody's here tonight. All right. So on the 1st, I traveled to Plymouth. On the 2nd, I helped my cousin Chris build a little bit of a deck behind his house because he's going to have a huge 4th of July party and family reunion that he always has on the 4th of July. And then at 8 o'clock that night on the 2nd of July, we got a telephone call from Colin, who is his nephew, and my second cousin nephew removed or something like that. And he said, would you like to play the golf course where the Ryder Cup is going to be played this year? I am first in line in the queue to get the earliest tee time on Bethpage Black tomorrow. So what did we do? We looked at each other. We went, yeah, we want to do that. So we jumped in the car at 11 o'clock at night. We drove 4 hours down to Long Island. We were number one in the queue, and I got to play Bethpage Black, which is the black course at Bethpage State Park. And all 4 of the people that played, so it's Chris, Brendan, Colin, and myself, we all hit less than 100. Now, Colin, who's the kid, he's a 2 handicap. He got a 80 on the course, so he was 80s. He's 8 over par playing from the back tees. I hit a 96 and I had a 9 on the card. Brendan had a 97 and Chris had a 99. So we all came in under 100. It was absolutely spectacular day. Then we drove back to Plymouth, Massachusetts. We had the 4th of July the next day, and it was absolutely spectacular. So I hope that you celebrated Independence Day and you had an absolutely spectacular Independence Day, celebrating the 249th birthday of our Declaration of Independence from Great Britain, where they can kiss our ass still to this day. So without further ado, we're going to kick right into the Constitution of the United States of America. We the people of the United States of America, to ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense. I love that. This is the Bill of Rights. If you don't know these, hey, real quick, what is your favorite amendment? I'm going to tell you what my favorite amendment is real quick. I'm going to show it to you. It's going to be spectacular. That is Article 9 of the Bill of Rights, which is the 9th Amendment to the Constitution, and it says, the enumeration and the construction of certain rights, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage other retained by the people. Does everybody understand what that means? That means the rights in the Bill of Rights and the amendments to the Constitution of the United States are not the only rights that you have. Yeah, you got religion, you have freedom of speech, you have right to assemble, not to search and seizure, not to have troops staying in your house without their protection. You got the right to the defense. You got all kinds of right. But just because they're not written in the Constitution and the amendments means that you still have other rights that are not mentioned in there. So don't ever think that the rights in the Constitution and the amendments are the only rights that the individual has. So I just want to cover that real quick. All right. Let's talk about the current population. Current population of the world is 8,233,732,512. In the United States of America, we have 347,000 people living with you, and we are in debt. That's right. The population of the United States is 3,000. That's a disparity, 3,041, 3,047, whatever. But this is about the right number, $37 trillion in debt. And then we are going to talk about the one beautiful bill. But before we get there, I just want to say thank you very much for putting up with me while I go out of town and when I come back, because it's important that I get my rest and relaxation. But the second thing I want to say about that is when I went up to Massachusetts, I was hanging out in a state that the Democrats have locked down. Every once in a while, they'll have a Republican governor. But you know what I found out about the people in Massachusetts? They're good people. Do you know what they want? They want the same thing that Arkansans want. They want the same thing that Texans have, the Floridians have, the people in Michigan. Kansas, Wyoming. You know what we want? We want the government to be small. We want the government to be efficient. We want the government to work well for us. We want to have opportunities. We want our kids to be educated. We want to have great neighborhoods. We want to have law enforcement that's effective. We want to be able to have systems in place where we know that we got a little bit of a safety net underneath all of us. We all want the same thing. Now, here's what the thing is about all wanting the same thing. Because we all want the same thing, we should be able to get along better. Nobody should be in a party. That's one of the things about Mickey in the Middle. When I say that we're trying to minimize the voices of the 20% of the crazies on the far left and the 20% of the crazies on the far right, the 60% of the people in the middle ought to be able to get together and be independent instead of being tribal. Because right now we're tribal. We have red states and blue states. Hey, how about if we just have people and that we're all independent? And when something comes out, we all go and read it and we decide whether it is good or bad for all of us. Now, the simple fact of the matter is that this big, beautiful bill that went through, it's a big, beautiful bill. But all of the omnibus bills and all the reconciliation bills before this that were passed by the House and the Senate and signed by the presidents. President Obama signed one. President Bush signed one. President Clinton signed one. We've been doing reconciliation bills since, oh my gosh, forever and ever and ever. They actually have a process in that. They can only do 1 or 2 reconciliation bills every single year. What they do is they avoid the regular budget process, which would have to survive the 60 vote Senate rule to be able to move legislation forward. It used to be a filibuster, and the minority party can filibuster against the majority party for as long as they wanted. That's why they talk for 24 hours at a time. It's called a filibuster. But a few years ago, they got rid of the filibuster and they replaced it with a 60% rule. That way, you would have a supermajority of the people in the Senate that agree that legislation should be able to move forward. In this process, called the reconciliation bill, to move the legislation forward to a vote, you only need to have 51% majority. So 51 senators, or if it's 50-50, then the vice president of the United States gets to make the deciding vote. That's pretty much the only thing that the vice president does in the Senate as president of the Senate. Normally, the majority leader leads the Senate, and that's how things kind of work in there. So, what the Republicans did in this case is the same thing that President Biden did when he had Congress, and President Obama and all the other presidents, all the way back to Reagan and before Reagan. So, the process is very important because the process really doesn't break any rules. I never liked the 60% majority in order to move legislation forward. I've never liked that. But it's a Senate rule, and that's what we're kind of stuck with until they change the rules. Now, the Senate can change the rules to whatever they want. The House of Representatives has rules and the way they're going to operate, and the Senate has rules the way that they're going to operate. But in this case, they decided to do a reconciliation, so they only needed 51% of the House of Representatives and of the Senate. Now, for those of you who don't know, there's 435 representatives in the House of Representatives. That is apportioned by states, and the Senate has 2 senators from each state, which is a total of 100 senators in the Senate, 2 from each state, 50 states, easy math. So anyway, it was signed on the 4th of July by President Trump. That is clear as mud. Now, there are some things in this bill that I don't know whether I agree with or not. But I do know that I agree with certain things, and those are the things we're going to talk about tonight. Because let's go back to our big page. This right here is the one beautiful bill. There is the President of the United States And this is from the White House. Notice that? So this is from the White House. Here's one of the things that people are getting rocked by, backed by American industry, Dell, 3M, Delta, Uber, Verizon, Comcast. And then it has all of these little job creator links, Business Roundtable, the Small Business Economic Council. And then if you look at these things, it goes on and on and on. The Americans leading independent producers of oil and natural gas, AXPC, the Numbers USA. These are all Airlines for America. These are all of the groups that supported this. Why am I pointing this out? Because I'm talking about philosophy here. I'm talking about the philosophy and the way our country is going to be managed. Everybody says that the people make up the majority of the United States of America. You got to remember, there's 347 million of us in the United States of America, and that everything needs to be focused on the 347 million Americans that are in the United States of America. What this bill did, this bill took that into consideration, but also took your money, my money, our tax money that we're sending to the federal government and that they're making from tariffs and that they're doing this, and they are boosting businesses and they're boosting different parts of the government that are going to give money to all of these businesses so these businesses can employ us. Now, unemployment is like 3.5%. It's really, really, really low. The stock market is at record levels, right? So the stock market high, unemployment is low, interest rates are still high because the Fed, who I disagree with on this time, are not lowering interest rates fast enough so that Americans have more of their money. So if you go buy a house, if you start a business, if you want to go buy something, if you want to go get a loan or anything, the Fed has not lowered rates commensurate with what the unemployment rate is doing and what the stock market is doing. So I'm a little bit mad at the dudes that are running the Fed right now. They need to lower the stock because that directly impacts you and me every single day and what we're going to be paying for our loans, for our houses, and for our cars, for our tractors, and everything else that is out there. Now, all of the organizations that supported this eventually put enough pressure on Congress to get this passed. So, what is everybody saying about this? Well, the best way to describe what is actually in the big beautiful bill. It's a bunch of stuff for everybody. Now, I'm not smart enough to be able to read 2,000 pages and be able and do a 4th of July vacation fast enough in order to read it and get back here. So I'm going to go to my favorite source document where I always start stuff because I don't care what you think of Wikipedia. I'm mad at Wikipedia, right? I think that they're prejudiced. I think they are slanted. I think that they lean to the left heavily. Their commentary is obviously written by people that are left leaning and do not like people that lean to the right. But in this case, when I looked up One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the OBBBA, isn't that crazy? Whatever happened to that? Then the simple fact of the matter is that the One Beautiful Bill is actually encapsulated very well in Wikipedia. So we're going to talk a little bit about Wikipedia. Before we go on, Mark Calcaterra asked, what happened to the line item veto? So we don't have a line item veto at the federal level. Several states have passed a line item veto. I don't know who they are, but I know that they are out there and exist. The reason is because when that went before the Supreme Court of the United States, the Supreme Court of the United States says, I'm sorry, Mr. President, you do not have authorization to line item veto items because the Constitution of the United States says that the budget will wholly be accomplished by Congress. So you cannot modify that. If you do modify that, you have got to send that back to Congress to have them do the reconciliation process all again, you can only sign it into law or veto it. When it comes to your desk, those are the only two options the President of the United States has. So, thank you very much for the great question there, Mark. Several states have it, but the federal government, the Supreme Court said you can't do it at the federal level. Now, they did not address whether it was legal at the state level, but they stay out of the state's business because the states run themselves. That's why we have 50 states with 50 different forms of government. They're all the same government, but they have different rules and regulations inside. That's why you can carry guns in some states and you can't carry guns in other states, because all of the states in the Constitution of the United States, anything that is not directly given to the federal government has got to remain with the states. So that's amendment number 10. But that's a great question. So let's go over some of the big, beautiful tax bill. One big, beautiful back, the OBBA, the OBBB, the BBB, the big, beautiful bill. It's a budget, right? OBB contains hundreds of provisions, permanently extends the individual tax rates. Now, here's the big deal on that. President Trump, when he got in office the first time, when he had the House and the Senate, and they were both fighting him and they were taking him to an impeachment early on for Russian collusion and all of the other crap that he did. What they did, when you remember the impeachments. Well, when they did that, he actually got through some significant tax cuts for the American people and for small businesses. But they were temporary tax cuts. They were not permanent tax cuts. So your government tricks you, and in this there are several tricks that they played when they go, hey, look here, these tax cuts are going to sunset at some time. So anyway, these tax cuts were going to end after 2025. So what the House and the Senate did is they sent a permanent tax cut up, and this is the first thing that was in there. So, there we go. It passed into law in 2017, which was originally set to expire at the end of 2025. It also raises the cap on the state and local tax deductions to $40,000 for taxpayers making less than $500,000, with a cap reverting to $10,000 after 5 years. Oh, this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? So some of the tax cuts are permanent, and then the tax deductions that we get because we pay state taxes, everybody does it. If you do taxes, you understand this, that the tax deductions, the taxes that you pay for the state can actually be a tax deduction at the federal level. And those can go up. They're $10,000 now, but they go up to $40,000. But those are going to expire in 5 years. Isn't that crazy? See how they're playing with your mind? That's why they got to keep going on this. How come we just can't get one tax bill that is permanent so that we know? I would like to have a one-page tax form. One page. Hey, man, how much did you earn? What tax bracket are you in? Boom, there you go. But they go on for tax credits and for kids and businesses and stuff like that. So the OBBA also includes several temporary tax deduction for tips, overtime pay, auto loans, and creates Trump accounts, allowing parents to create tax-deferred accounts for the benefit of their children, all set to expire in 2028. That's right. So all of the temporary tax deduction for tips, overtime pay, auto loans, all set to expire in 2028. How about that? Now, do you remember when Trump got elected? Right, that was 2024. 2028 is at the end of his term. That means he's set to screw whoever comes in unless Congress renews those taxes. Isn't that crazy? That's the craziest way to go about it. Also, it creates Trump accounts, allowing parents to create tax-deferred accounts for the benefit of their children, all set to expire in 2028. It also includes a permanent $200 increase in child tax credit, a 1% tax on remittance, and a tax hike on investment income from college endowments. Now, down in the bottom of the page, it talks about the endowments. You remember how Harvard and Yale and all those have billions of dollars in their account? He's upping the taxes on those endowments because all those billionaires are not paying their fair share. I don't know what fair share is. I don't know. I'm going to admit it. I don't know what fair share is. I don't believe that there is a fair share. I believe that if we all paid 10%, 12%, 14%, if we just did a flat tax in this country, it would be better for everybody. And it doesn't matter how small your income is or how large your income is, because if you're paying 10% on $1,000,000, you're paying $100,000. How about that? If you're paying 10% on $10,000, you're paying $1,000. Wouldn't that be fair? Right? Everybody pays the exact same thing. And you go, well, they're billionaires. Well, you could do a progressive tax. It's kind of like what we have right now. But let's get serious about that. 10%, if you do a flat tax, and then all of those millionaires and billionaires don't have the tax exemptions that they currently have, that means that more money then comes in and they can't defer their taxes until a later date. Everybody got to pay every year. That's the way that I think about it, but that's just me, right? So let me go down here. Here we go. I'm going to highlight these. Extends the 2017 tax cuts. Cap for state and local taxes. This is all state and local taxes. We just talked about that. Tips and overtime creates new tax deductions for tips and overtime for workers making less than $150,000, capped to $25,000 each. Allow car buyers to deduct up to $10,000 per year in auto loan interest for cars assembled in the United States of America. Why? Because when you buy made in American products and you're not buying the automobiles from overseas, they're trying to make it easier on you to be able to afford a car made in the United States of America. Here's what my problem is. If they take the cars and they jack up the price of the cars, does it really matter what the tax deduction is going to be? Listen, one of the best cars that I've ever owned is my daughter's Kia Soul. I absolutely love that thing. But my wife had a Camaro when she passed away. I drive Ford trucks. I've got just awesome automobiles. I think they're all great. I digress. Tax credit for seniors permanently eliminates a personal exemption, which has been temporary, eliminated by the Tax Cuts and Job Act 2017's offers temporary tax deduction set to expire in 2028 of $6,000 for seniors. Deduction phases out for individuals with modified adjusted income exceeding $75,000. Increases the child tax credit. Everybody says that was going to not be in existence, but it does. Pro-Alaska changes this right here. In order to get the people from Alaska on, it said that you're going to increase the tax deduction on whaling boat captains, a waiver process for exemption for planned SNAP cuts in Alaska. College endowments. This is the big one that I was talking about. You got to remember, we're talking about college endowments. Those people have been collecting billions of dollars, and then they play the market and they make it even bigger, and we've been giving them tax credits and tax deductions on that. It's been almost free, so they haven't been paying anything on that. But let's take a look at that. Increased taxes on investment income from college endowment estimated to raise $761 million over 10 years. Colleges were more than 3,000 students, and an endowment per student ratio of $500,000 will be taxed at 1.4%, with the tax rate increasing to 8% for the wealthiest colleges. So that means that they are sticking it right where it belongs. Is that absolutely incredible or not? This is the last thing I'm going to talk about. Last two things I'm going to talk about because these are important. Phase out of green tax credits. Start to phase out green tax credit, passing the Biden-era Inflation Reduction Acts for wind and solar and all of that crap. All of the cylinders in the world, all of the tax credits, all the green stuff that's out there, we've been giving billions of dollars to that, and it hasn't done any good. Look, the temperature has stabilized. It's not carbon. It never was carbon. Carbon wasn't what the problem was. CO2, if you will. It's not what the problem was. The problem is we got billions of people on the planet now. We all have heat sinks in our home. We affect the environment every time we take off in an airplane. Of course, 8 billion people are going to affect the planet. I'm just saying. Last thing I want to talk about, and this kind of makes me mad. Raises the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. That crazy? It raises the debt ceiling. Now, I don't know what you think of money, and I don't know what you think of the nation's debt. But the nation's debt right now, as far as I'm concerned, is $37 trillion. In order to service that debt, we pay $1 trillion in interest every year on the bonds that the United States of America has issued. It's almost $1 trillion. The amount that we're doing on that is bigger than the defense budget, which is also increasing. And I'll show you a little taste of that here in just a second. But here's the thing is, that's crazy money. What could we do with $1 trillion? I want you to keep that in mind, because what I'm going to show you next is going to absolutely blow your mind. I'm going to show you the rest of the big, beautiful bill as fast as I possibly can, because these are some numbers that are going to be big. And when you remember $1 billion, billion is big, but to service our national debt is $1 trillion. Are you ready to go? All right, so here you go. Big, beautiful bill. Military defense features, $29 billion for shipbuilding, $25 billion for the Golden Dome, $25 billion for munitions, $16 billion for military innovation, AI, including money for kamikaze drones, uncrewed aircraft systems, drone boats, underwater drones, $15 billion for nuclear deterrence, $12 billion for improving military operations in the Indo-Pacific, $25 billion in various infrastructure and housing improvement, $23 billion in funding for the U.S. Coast Guard. Border security, $170 billion is going towards the border. Asylum fees. Oh, wait a minute. Asylum fees. The bill would establish a $100 annual fee to apply for asylum, down from $1,000. Hey, that's pretty good. Medicare cut. Establish a $50 billion rural hospital fund, up from $25 billion to support health care in rural areas. Bill cuts $1.2 trillion federal spending, primarily for Medicaid and nutrition funding. And the reason is all of that is supposed to be going to the states. Why? Because we live in 50 different states, and the states are supposed to be taking care of the people. The people are not supposed to be taken care of by the federal government. If you got a problem with your state having problems with poor people, you need to talk to your state, because your state needs to be taking care of the poor people that live in the states. I'm just saying, California should be taking care of the California homeless and all the crazy people that are out there in California. Florida ought to be taking care of Florida man and all the crazy people down in Florida. The federal government should not be in the business of providing anything to take care of citizens of the states. That is the state's job. I hope you enjoyed the show. Lastly, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate Kim Fisher is my senior pickleball mixed doubles partner. We are going to the Senior Olympics at the end of the month. So that week I will be in Des Moines, Iowa with senior Olympians from all over the United States of America. It's the Senior Games. I don't know whether I'm going to have a show that week, but I'm going to try to have a show next week. But I'm traveling to Des Moines, Iowa to play mixed doubles with Kim Fisher. We went up and we took a beating on some games this morning, but we won other games up in Heber Springs. That was awesome. I came back to Cabot. I played a little bit more pickleball with my friends. Stephen Masayo, that was absolutely great going up to Cabot. Hey, if you're in the pickleball world, there's great pickleball all over the United States and all over in Cabot, Arkansas. So, hey, you make sure you get out there and play a little bit of pickleball. So that's going to be the show for the night. Just want to say thank you to all my pickleball partners, because it was absolutely great. So remember, Mickey in the middle of the week, 9 p.m. Central, every Wednesday, wherever you are, wherever I am. It doesn't matter where you're going. Doesn't matter where you've been. Just matters that you're here right now being the best middle American that you can possibly be. I love you. I hope you guys have a fantastic night. And you guys take care. Love you. God bless America. Woo!
first sight when she walked through that door. The most beautiful girl I'd ever seen before. Sea green eyes and long blonde hair, cool smooth smile and didn't have care. I don't know why, but she walked my way. I was scared to death, but I was ready to play. Love at first sight sets the spirit free. I felt the dark clouds part, I heard the angels sing. My heart caught fire and my soul came